have the coverage that they thought they did or that they needed. So reviewing coverages, making sure your legal documents, your birth certificates, your driver's licenses are handy and available or stored somewhere electronically so that you can replace them quickly. A lot of people don't think about pet documents, vaccinations, any documents you may, medical records. If you have to evacuate, some facilities will provide, resources to home your pet, but the pets need to be vaccinated. And if you can't prove that, they may not allow you to stay there. So keep your pet's documents available for you to take with you if you need them. If you can afford a fireproof safe, or something that's fireproof, waterproof, and put those documents in there, so even if they stay behind, you might be able to find them and recover them from the wreckage. Things like that. If you have deeds, review your deeds, make sure they're in your name. There's nothing that would block you from making an insurance claim or a FEMA claim because you don't have a copy of a deed with your name on it.
Paul, what's the bottom line that you want people to know about some of these legal needs that come up and how organizations like Community Legal Services can help?
Well, we're present throughout the 12 counties that make up Central Florida. We're at outreach events. We're there we hold clinics to discuss these issues before and after a storm. So before, you want to prepare by having your legal documents secure. Afterwards, give us a call. We will, if you qualify, we will provide legal services to you at no cost. But don't worry about whether you qualify or not. Just give us a call, reach out to us, and we will let you know whether you qualify or not. If you have any doubts, just give us a call.
All right. Paul Ferreira, managing attorney with the Disaster Legal Services Unit with Community Legal Services. Really appreciate you joining us this morning. Helpful information here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I am Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. A busy hour ahead of us here. Want to let you know a little bit of what we have as we continue to follow a lot of stories this afternoon here on Florida Live. Going to be speaking at 2:40 rather, with an immigration attorney about some legal and logistical issues that are surrounding ICE raids. So this comes after we saw just a couple of weeks ago the largest ICE raid in the state in Tallahassee, the state capital. 100 people detained in that, and still many questions, including about where some of them might have been taken. We're going to be talking with an immigration attorney about that coming up in just a little bit. It is a Playbook Tuesday where we speak with our friends at Politico Florida about a number of political issues around the state budget negotiations still ongoing. In fact, meeting scheduled for 2:30 on that. So we will check in with Kimberly Leonard from Politico Florida in just a little bit. In our Tampa connection, a teenage entrepreneur launching a portable energy unit that could be a game changer during hurricane season. We'll have the details on that coming up when we check in with Nancy. But we begin this afternoon with Governor Ron DeSantis in Jacksonville this afternoon, where he signed a number of bills that he says holds sexual predators accountable. Several of those bills, I just want to run down a few of them here. HB 777, which strengthens laws against luring children. HB 1351, that strengthens reporting and monitoring for sex offenders. HB 1455, that's mandatory minimums for specified sexual offenses committed by registered sex offenders. And then HB 1161, which is known as Brooke's Law, and that is cracking down on deepfake pornography. And the person who that the bill is named after was actually at this news conference this afternoon with Governor Ron DeSantis as he spoke in Jacksonville about the importance of these bills.
So we've done a lot, but today we're going to do more. So I'm going to sign a series of bills that are going to make Florida remain as the #1 state in the country for the protection of our kids. First, HB 777 strengthens Florida's laws against luring or enticing children by expanding the definition of the crime, increasing penalties, and eliminating certain defenses based on a child's misrepresented or mistaken age. I'm also signing HB 1351, which strengthens registration, reporting, and verification requirements for sexual predators and offenders in Florida. The bill also enhances accountability and improves law enforcement monitoring of offenders' location and employment activities. You know, some of these offenders, they exploit loopholes in the system to be able to set up shop in certain communities, acting like they're just visiting or going back. And so this plugs that loophole so that if they're going to spend time here in Jacksonville, you're going to know that they're spending time here, and they're going to have to report that so that you can protect your kids. Third, I'm signing Florida House Bill 1455, which provides mandatory minimum terms of imprisonment for specified sexual offenses when committed by registered sexual offenders or sexual predators. Let me tell you, just as somebody who has been involved in law enforcement as a prosecutor and, of course, is now the head of the executive branch in Florida, these offenders, sexual offenders, they are going to reoffend, right? So you can put them away for the maximum and say someone gets a 15-year sentence and they serve it and they come out. The chance of them reoffending is very, very high when you start talking about these sexual predators. And so you got to have a minimum amount of time that they're just taken off the streets. Ultimately, the registry, all these things, they're tools, but the only thing that really, really guarantees the safety of the children is to find every last daggum predator and put them in jail and get them off the street. That's what you need to do. Now, mandatory minimums, some people criticize because they say, well, you know, you could have too much for this. And, you know, the justice system is imperfect. I acknowledge that. But the reality is we have, unfortunately, some judges that just do not give the gravity of a sentence that warrants it when you're talking about abuse of minors. I mean, you will have some that will throw the book at them, then you'll have others where it's like a little bit more wishy-washy. So this ensures that there's a baseline level of accountability where you're holding these sexual predators accountable. And again, these are people that are already registered offenders, and then they're reoffending in the community. You know, I think these sexual predators, I mean, remember, I signed the legislation to reinstitute the death penalty for pedophiles. I think that that's appropriate when you're doing some of this stuff. But at a minimum, they need to be taken off the street. You shouldn't even be in a position where you're having to monitor their every move and just hoping that somehow they're going to reform themselves, because we know that the chance of that happening is not very good. We also have on the docket SB 1804, which establishes capital human trafficking of vulnerable persons for sexual exploitation as a new capital felony offense. And so it's kind of piggybacks on what we did on the child sex abuse, but brings that into the human trafficking realm, which is a huge, huge problem in the world, and certainly in the United States of America. So I'm glad that we are doing really significant efforts to continue to fight human trafficking. Now, we also have with us today, as I mentioned, Brooke Curry, a Jacksonville teenager whose personal experience with AI-generated explicit imagery catalyzed legislative action in Florida this session. And accordingly, I'm going to be signing HB 1161, Brooke's Law, to strengthen protections for individuals whose images are used in non-consensual, sexually explicit, deepfake content by requiring covered online platforms to implement a notice and removal system. So these are people that are manipulating this stuff, but they can do it so well that a lot of people think that this is authentic and just think of what that does as somebody who gets victimized by this. And so Florida law does not currently provide a mechanism by which victims can request the removal of these altered depictions without consent. So Brooke's law will protect victims of digital sexual abuse by ensuring victims of deepfake exploitation have a clear, enforceable process to remove damaging material. Also requires covered platforms such as websites and online services to remove altered sexual depictions and copies of such depictions from their platform upon request of the victim within 48 hours. It also prevents legal overreach by maintaining platform immunity for good faith compliance, avoiding the chilling effects on speech or over moderation. And then finally, the bill gives platforms room to design their own processes while enforcing a baseline level of accountability. I want to thank Brooke for her courage to come forward and to lead this effort. I think it's really important, and it also raises the issue of this whole artificial intelligence. They're talking about in Washington banning states from being able to regulate it at all for the next 10 years. And as governor, I want to be able to provide protections for you working with the legislature if that's warranted. This stuff is progressing so quickly, but you will absolutely get to a point where they can just take you, they can put words in your mouth and do a video, and you're basically saying something that's the opposite of what you actually believe, and they can have you depict you doing awful things. That's not the world that we want to live in, and so I think that the states need to be able to retain their ability to handle the emerging AI issues. We're not going to run away from it. We know it's going to be a part of military operations. It's going to be a part of a lot of things. Although I will say this, they talk about the power of it, and there's a lot of things that are powerful about it, but there's also a lack of common sense in some of these AI things. I mean, like, sometimes they just don't, they can't reason like a human being does, and so there's not only dangers with how good it can be, but there's also dangers by employing it without recognizing some of the limitations and the flaws that it has, because I've seen that firsthand, and I've had to go in and fight with like Grok or some of these and say, wait a minute, that's wrong. Oh yeah, you're right, I saw that. And then like they admit they were wrong, but I'm like, why were you wrong the first time? So this is a really significant issue of all the different things. I mean, how people's privacy is going to be respected or not, how it's going to affect the economy, and what types of jobs are going to be available to people. These are really, it's maybe the most fundamental issue that we're going to confront over the next many, many years. And I just think you as Floridians should have the right to be able to petition your policymakers to provide protections for you. If that's something that you think is right, they're trying to kneecap the states from being able to do that. And I do think that that's a mistake.
Governor DeSantis talking about artificial intelligence as he signed some of those laws, including that one that cracks down on deepfake porn. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back with more after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that, we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Well, we're going to start with some sad news out of Tampa today. We have learned that Tampa City Councilwoman Gwendolyn Henderson has died. We were told that the 60-year-old passed away from natural causes sometime overnight. Henderson, she was born in Tampa and grew up in the Carver City neighborhood. She also graduated from Jefferson High School. She taught in Hillsborough County Public Schools and owned a Black English bookstore in historic Tampa Heights. Henderson was elected to represent District 5 in 2023. That district covers downtown Tampa, Ybor City, and Tampa Heights, a community she called home for more than 30 years. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor also appointed Henderson to serve as a board director with the Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, or HART. We did speak with the chair of the Tampa City Council this morning, earlier today, and here's what he had to say about the passing of Henderson.
She was not someone that was going to, slip into the background. Things that she was passionate about, she fought for. She was very, very passionate about Black history. She was passionate about her neighborhoods. She grew up in Carver City. She was very passionate about, that being a historical neighborhood and protecting it. She just brought so much energy for the community that she represented. It was a privilege to serve next to her.
And the city of Tampa says it plans to release how it plans to honor Henderson within the next couple of days here. And a special election will be held to fill her seat since her term wasn't set to run out until April 30th of 2027. Garrett?
All right, certainly wishing her, our thoughts are with her family and those who knew her. Certainly a big loss. Our second story, and this is a teenage entrepreneur with quite an invention that could be a big help for hurricane season.
Yes, this story has been trending on our website all morning. So Noah Build, he's only 19 and he lives out in Palm Harbor, and he has launched a portable energy unit just in time for hurricane season. Now this energy unit is commercial grade and it's made up of lithium iron phosphate. Now Build says that the power bank alone will allow someone to run a refrigerator for 2 to 3 days. And once you hook up the solar panels, it can be hooked up indefinitely. The invention is called Off-Grid Pro, and it's something that Build has been working on for the past couple of years. But last year's hurricane season was the catalyst to release the product now. He says it will be the perfect tool for Bay Area communities during hurricane season. He says that this invention is meant to rival Tesla Powerwall. Now, Tesla Powerwall can cost more than $10,000, but his invention, he says, will cost about half that, so about $5,000. Now, Build has marketed his product at street festivals in Safety Harbor, Palm Harbor, and in Tarpon Springs. He hopes to expand the product to municipalities to use, and someday he hopes to create his own line of electric vehicles. Now, if you want to get your hands on one of these units, Build says he can have it shipped out by October 1st. Just visit fox13news.com and click on this story. We do have a link that will provide more information about this Off-Grid Pro and how you might be able to get your hands on one. Garrett?
I tell you what, 19 years old and he was able to do that. That is impressive. And like we said, certainly a helpful tool.
Yes, definitely helpful. And as you mentioned, he's just 19 years old and he's actually building this in his garage out in Palm Harbor. I believe he still lives with his parents. And so he's been building this in his parents' garage out in Palm Harbor. And it's such a useful tool and something that most Bay Area communities can probably benefit from come this hurricane season.
Well, if he ends up making a lot of money on that invention, I'm sure his parents are going to jack up the rent on him. So we'll see what there might be a follow-up there.
Yes, he has to contribute.
Right. Well, story number 3 today, and that is a convicted felon arrested in DeSoto County, and some interesting developments with an investigation there.
Yes, this is something that started a few weeks ago. The DeSoto County Sheriff's Office said it had been investigating the theft of a $98,000 skid steer. That is a large piece of construction equipment. So sheriff's deputies said that they've been looking for the person who stole this piece of equipment for the past couple of weeks, and they said they tracked a vehicle and a trailer that was traveling across DeSoto County. Now, investigators said that deputies in Highlands and also Hendry counties also issued BOLO alerts for a black Dodge Ram that was hauling large construction equipment. Now, they determined that this is the same one that was spotted in DeSoto County a few weeks ago. And on Monday, the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office Investigative Bureau said they saw the truck and they tried to pull it over, but the driver, who's been identified as Yam Nunez, led deputies on a high-speed chase down Highway 70. So deputies enlisted the help of state troopers, and together they were able to do a pit maneuver on this truck. They say after that pit maneuver, the truck rolled and they were able to take Nunez into custody. Investigators said that Nunez is a convicted felon who had an expired driver's license, and they add that the truck he was driving was also stolen and is believed to be tied to multiple heavy equipment thefts across Florida. A search warrant was obtained to investigate further, and so these investigators are looking for tools, paperwork, stolen parts, and evidence that's commonly used to dismantle this traffic equipment. Garrett?
Interesting investigation there, and that wraps up our Tampa connection. Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. A lot to talk about in the world of Florida politics, and joining us, as she always does on Tuesdays, is Kimberly Leonard, who is a Politico reporter and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter. And Kimberly, good to see you. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, great to be back on.
So let's first talk budget, because we know just got word in the last little bit that another conference meeting has been scheduled for this afternoon. What's the latest on the negotiations up in Tallahassee?
Yeah, there's a couple meetings this afternoon. One is on education, the other one's on healthcare. And yesterday they did move the budget forward a bit. They were able to come up with certain agreements, including on some of the priorities that Governor DeSantis had asked for. Now, he's not getting quite as much as he wanted, but he is getting something. So that's a win for the governor. One of them was a recruitment bonus for law enforcement officers who move to Florida. DeSantis has never actively encouraged people to move to Florida. They're just doing it in droves. But the one group that he has sort of, tried to say, hey, please come join us here, has been law enforcement. And then there's also funding to help businesses expand into other parts of Florida. So all very kind of pro-economic policies.
And nice to finally see some movement, some steps forward on that as time continues to kind of run out on all that. Kimberly, let's talk about these anti-ICE protests going on in California right now, because that has really, we have seen as that has continued, leaders here in Florida kind of lean into a bit of a contrast between the two states when it comes to things like this. So what have we heard and what have we seen when it comes to that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, the White House loves this contrast. They love having Governor Gavin Newsom of California as a foil. And so does Governor DeSantis. I mean, if you recall, he and Governor Newsom did face off in a Fox News debate during the 2024 GOP primary for president, even though Gavin Newsom was not running. And it was just, what the governor has been doing is going around the state talking a lot about how Florida does stand in contrast to what's happening in California. I mean, he signed a bill into law that really clamped down on protests. It was pretty controversial at the time, but it ended up being held up in court. And he's saying, look, California is a mess. Here in Florida, we're all about law and order. So they're really trying to draw out that contrast so that they can not only, align themselves with Trump, which is what Florida's trying to do, but also still have that sort of California versus Florida proxy war. And I should mention, for Governor Newsom and his base and the Democratic Party, the fight is also good for him because he gets to show himself standing up to Trump, even in the middle of what has been, a very emotional and trying time.
Kimberly, I also want to talk about a couple of special elections today.
Yeah. So when Trump appointed various Floridians to his administration and ended up opening various seats in Congress, and then those people who were in state government ran for office. So you had Randy Fine, you had a couple other people across the state. And so there are state special elections for various, House and state Senate seats. They're probably pretty safe Republican, but they still give, Democrats an opportunity to message and to especially bring up a lot of the affordability issues that Florida has been facing. And so we should know the results pretty early. That's one of the nice things about Florida, is that our election laws really allow us to find out, who wins pretty early in the evening. So it shouldn't be a late night.
That's always a good thing when you're covering elections. If you can get those results early, it's nice to know. Now, finally, you're writing in Playbook about this redistricting lawsuit. What should we know about that as we continue to watch that?
Yeah, well, what's fascinating is, so first of all, it involves a district over between Hillsborough and Pinellas counties, which is closer, to kind of where y'all are. I'm down in Miami, but it involves redistricting and whether there was a racial gerrymander of the area. The two areas that they're looking at actually are not connected by a bridge. And so it has to do with Representative Senator Rousson's district. And so it's in trial all this week. And they also are bringing in journalists to testify, which is pretty unusual. And that's because in public records requests, various communications between journalists were picked up. And so you're going to see some reporters called on to the stand, which is not something that you see every day. So that's something that we're also closely watching. Yeah,
certainly. That is a very good point there. Now, finally, before we let you go, Kimberly, I always like to get your take on what else we should be watching in the world of Florida politics.
Yeah, well, I think with all the protests happening, in LA, I think it's important to see, kind of how it all plays out in Florida, if there's any protests sort of done in solidarity to that. There's also going to be a bunch of protests across the U.S. called the No Kings protests against the president's big celebration in Washington this weekend. And so it'll be interesting to see how, again, that plays out in Florida. Trump is popular here, but there are still a lot of pockets who, are very unhappy. And so, we'll be watching how local and state law enforcement and then, the federal government reacts depending on how those all play out.
Okay, and we do know of several of those planned for our area for this weekend as well, so we will certainly keep a close watch. Kimberly Leonard, Politico reporter and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter. Always good talking with you, and we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, great to see you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. We are continuing to track the fallout from what officials say is the largest illegal immigration raid in Florida history that happened on that construction site in Tallahassee, where we know more than 100 people were taken into custody on the site of that student housing complex near the FSU campus in Tallahassee. And that creates a lot of legal and logistical questions when it comes to what happens next for those who may have a loved one who was detained in that raid. And so we want to go ahead and bring in Elizabeth Ricci. She is an immigration attorney, partner at Rambana Ricci, also an adjunct immigration law professor at Florida State University. And Elizabeth, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thanks, Garrett, for having me.
So Elizabeth, we know you are advising at least, a dozen detainees from these ICE raids in Tallahassee?
We think so. It's hard to tell exactly where and when our clients are picked up, but we believe about a dozen of our newer clients are from that raid.
Talk to us about what's going on. We've heard of reports that many families, many loved ones are having trouble locating where their loved one is, whoever it was that was detained from these raids. Why is that?
It is more difficult under this administration to track a loved one who is in detention than it was previously. And it appears that at least several of the people who were recently detained in Tallahassee are being transported between various facilities, some of them up to 9 or 10 times. So that makes it very hard, one, for families to find them, but two, very difficult to represent them.
Why do you think it's harder now than it was before?
I think there's several reasons for it. One reason for the frequent transportation is to locate detainees in jurisdictions that are more strict and or are closer to the border to expedite their removal.
So when you are advising detainees in situations like this, what do you tell them? What sort of rights do they have at this point?
Well, it depends. So if someone's already been ordered removed, they really don't have a second bite at the apple. They had their chance already. But if you haven't been removed yet and you are in detention now, you can request a bond. And if you are not detained, then you can request relief through the immigration court. For example, if you do have loved ones here, immediate relatives who are legal permanent residents or citizens, you can request relief through court. So ironically, many of these people may actually end up legalizing as a result of this raid.
How is that?
So you can request what's called cancellation of removal. So if you are undocumented and you are picked up and you've been here for 10 years, don't have a serious criminal history, and have citizen or permanent resident immediate family who would suffer if you were removed, you can request a green card in court.
What impact are you seeing, as an immigration attorney? What impact are you seeing the state law have on not just these operations, these raids we're seeing, but the impacts in the court system as well, and how these cases are moving forward?
Well, this was a joint operation with 4 Florida agencies along with ICE, which is unique. Traditionally, states have not gotten involved in raids, but because of Florida's new legislation, our agencies are doing so. And I think the impact is being felt across the state, but especially in Tallahassee. As a result of that raid, we've got 43 housing projects going on right now that are going to be affected if they haven't been already. The Perla location a couple of weeks ago that was raided, that was $100 million project. So we're going to see people, number one, afraid to go to work, but number two, people who are employing those individuals having trouble continuing to employ. Unfortunately, the construction industry is heavily reliant on immigrant labor, and about 17% of their immigrant labor in that industry is undocumented. So as Florida continues to enforce its new immigration laws, we're going to see it be more difficult to meet our housing shortages. We're going to see costs increase. Again, people are going to be afraid to go to work, and families are going to have more trouble locating their loved ones until this kind of equalizes, which we're hoping to see within the year.
We talk about some of that confusion surrounding this, and these families trying to find their loved ones who were detained. What do you think needs to be done to make that process more transparent, to make it so that these loved ones are able to find their family members?
Well, ICE needs to comply with the law. I had a client last week tell me that a detainee loved one of theirs would not be given their alien number by ICE at the facility where they were being held. Without that alien number, it's virtually impossible to track someone and to represent them. So we're hoping that ICE plays along the rules of the game, as immigration attorneys are, to make representation fair and compliant with the law.
What are your other kind of main concerns as we obviously this is the largest the raid that we've seen so far, but certainly there are indications that we will continue to see operations like this moving forward. What are some of your main concerns from your perspective?
Well, of course, my concerns are that U.S. citizens are going to be caught up on this. People who are documented, people who have permanent residency. Over 100 people were detained recently in Tallahassee. Of those, only 2 ICE holds were issued. So that is a huge economic output for 2 detainees. I understand the reasoning, and I think we can all agree that our immigration system is broken. We're going to see more and more law enforcement efforts, joint agencies spending taxpayer money to do the federal government's job.
And so when people see this, people watching right now, what's the main thing you want them to know?
Well, if you're an immigrant, especially if you have an immigrant loved one who is undocumented, they should have something in place that if they don't come home from work, children and bank accounts are protected. So a power of attorney would be advisable. Everyone in this country has constitutional rights, regardless of their immigration status. So if someone is picked up, they have the right to an attorney. In the immigration context, not at government expense, because immigration violations are civil, although immigrants in this context are treated criminally. They are not entitled to government appointed attorney, but they are allowed to have an attorney at their expense. They're allowed to maintain silence. And I think cool heads prevail if people are understanding what their rights are and in contact with their family and their attorneys, that they, if they have a benefit available, can overcome the situation. And like I said, many will end up legalizing as a result of this raid.
Elizabeth Ricci, an immigration attorney with Rambana and Ricci, and also an adjunct immigration law professor at Florida State University. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thanks, Karen.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I am Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. This morning, a U.S. Senate subcommittee held a meeting to talk about the impact of the federal government's border policy when it comes to international sporting events. So we're talking the Olympics in 2028. We're talking the World Cup scheduled for 2026. Many of those events scheduled to be hosted in Los Angeles, other places across the country as well. But we also know that strict border policies, anti-illegal immigration pushes from the Trump administration are causing some concerns with some of these international bodies, these athletic organizations putting on some of these events. But during the hearing today, I want to play for you as we heard from Senator Ashley Moody, who also spoke about some security threats to major sporting events, including at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. Here's some of that hearing earlier today on Capitol Hill.
I spent nearly 15 years as a bomb technician in the Army, so there's not a whole lot that gets me nervous. But I think, the asymmetric threats that, were just talked about is a concern. But, from my perspective as the OCOG leading the organization, when I think about the magnitude of bringing 15 million people into Southern California, Oklahoma City, and across the nation as we hit all 50 states in our torch relay, and the logistics that goes with that, and the security planning and the security apparatus that is behind all of those are the things that really, I think, are top of mind for me, that I will say keep me up at night. It is really thinking about and trying to orchestrate and coordinate the magnitude of the undertaking.
Senator, if I could just add, in addition to actually making it safe and secure, it's important that the travelers perceive it's safe and secure, and they can trust and rely on that and want to come to this country.
Okay. And I see you. Back to the chair.
Can do. Senator Moody.
Thank you, Chair, Ranking Member. An incredibly important hearing. Thank you for taking the time to lead this hearing this morning. From the state of Florida, you can imagine this is of great interest to us. We host numerous international and national sporting events. I think during my time as Attorney General in Florida, we hosted back-to-back Super Bowls. Security of our large events, sporting events in particular, is of utmost importance to us, especially since we are also a state committed to law and order and consistently striving to be the example of how you can maintain a safe community and state for the citizens that we've pledged to do and as a government. General, thank you for your service to our nation. I was just at West Point watching the graduation a couple of weeks ago. The oldest boy in our family just graduated from there, and I'm always mindful of the greatness of this nation rests on the backs of so many that served us, and we are grateful to you. There have been traditional security threats associated with these large-scale events, from checkpoints, human trafficking even. We would often, in preparation as Attorney General, would host large-scale human trafficking trainings for law enforcement, but not just law enforcement, our other stakeholders, the hospitality industry. All of these things are necessary. I think what is unique now, and we're watching it on TV right as we speak, is the necessity of having strong leadership, both state and local, in cooperation with federal authorities to maintain law and order. And, I'm hoping in the future that international and national events take into consideration what kind of leadership is offered at the state level, because you can see when you have weak leadership in terms of safety and security and law and order, you often see civil unrest that could have been avoided. And you're going to have your work cut out for you in LA. I mean, that's just a fact. And we're watching it play out right now. In fact, in Florida, we have strong concerns because in 2024, we had security breaches at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida, and that's going to be where 8 FIFA Club World Cup matches, including the opening match, and 7 FIFA World Cup matches, including the bronze final match, will be played. We saw spectators able to get around gates and hop fences and climb through ventilation systems to avoid security personnel. And all of that takes the cooperation of not just federal authorities and on-site, but leading up to the events, local authorities working and providing intel to make sure this kind of things don't happen. So I'm watching what's playing out right now in LA. We talked about what keeps you up at night. What keeps me up at night is this is happening in our country. And I fear, if in LA specifically, that you're going to have your work cut out for you and have to bring to bear all of the talents and experiences you used in the military, but all of your relationships working with state and locals. And hopefully they'll come around to their senses by then and work with the federal government to ensure security. And I wish you well with that. That is a challenge that I can't believe we're having to address in our nation right now. Dr. Lagone, I wanted to talk to you about developing technologies. Drones are presenting very unique risks right now to large-scale sporting events. We're seeing a lot of drone activity over military bases right now. I've introduced a bill to combat taking video using drones because one of our laws has a loophole that allows for that to happen. It's illegal to take pictures using drones of military installations, but not video. So we're trying to update our laws, close loopholes. I'm very concerned with drones and how they might be used to undermine security and safety of patrons attending sporting events. Families Against Fentanyl has been warning for a long time about the fentanyl coming into this country that's being stockpiled in 2021. Just in that 1 year, it was enough to kill the entire US population multiple times over. And they have a study that just horrified me, that drones could be used to release fentanyl. I know that you have thought through this. We are now, as senators and one of my other committees, determining how we might be able to better use state and locals to help with some of the threats from drones. Do you have any suggestions where the federal government might provide better laws or resources to the state and local law enforcement to help combat those threats?
Thank you so much for that question. Drones are something that keep me up at night because you see them in other theaters. One of the problems with that, though, is that most of our research has been done about drones that are in the Middle East or in Mexico. We don't have any comprehensive studies in the United States looking at how they work in our operating environment. So even with this legislation, we don't know how it's going to deter or even have any ramifications because there's no framework in the United States about how to integrate all of this information. So one of the things that I would recommend is for us to get a better handle on what's happening with all of the downed drones in the United States, because we do have them in areas of war. We know that Iranian-sponsored groups are using them much more over there, and we are able to use technology to understand them, but we don't have them here in the U.S. And so I think what you're talking about is a really important question, but we just don't have the answers right now because we don't have any kind of systematic way to evaluate them. Thank you.
And if there were studies out there that people had conducted on their own or groups very interested in the security of our large-scale events, those would be of interest to you, certainly, I know. But if you do come across those, please forward. We're trying to collect as many as we can. Please forward those to us so we may consider them for future legislation.
Yeah, that would be great. We have a large-scale study right now funded by Science and Technology Directorate where we're trying to codify what they're used for and what the supply chain was to create them. And that's why I've learned that there's nothing out there like it.
Was earlier today on Capitol Hill, meanwhile awaiting the arrival of President Trump at Fort Bragg, where he is expected to speak to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. It was a dominant win last night for the Florida. I was combining two words there. Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers. Dominant win for them last night in Game 3 of the NHL's Stanley Cup Finals. They beat the Edmonton Oilers 6-1. It was kind of the Panthers team that we had seen for much of the playoffs, but hadn't necessarily seen them to that extent yet in the finals. But they are now up 2-1, heading into Game 4, which is scheduled for Thursday, also down in Sunrise, Florida. Here's what some of the players had to say post-game after last night's big win.
Got to save the legs a little bit in the third, but it was a great, great first 40. I mean, even in the third, we played, super well and super, disciplined, just like a veteran older team who's been here. This is our third time at it. We just, it's a series, and you got to stick up for each other, but got to be smart too. So we were. Thought it was great that guys are sticking up for each other, and at the end of the day, it's just a big win, and it's just one game.
So was it about imposing your will in this game, this team imposing your will on home ice coming out?
Yeah, I don't know. We just want to protect home ice and play well in front of our fans, and it feels like we've been on the road all playoffs, which we have been, so it's nice to come back here and play well in front of our fans. They deserve it.
6 different goal scorers tonight. What can you say about the balanced effort, 6 different goal scorers?
Yeah, thought everybody had a great game. Played simple, hard, fast, physical, and supported each other and up and down the ice. And when we do that, it makes it easier on each other.
Was it the typical San-Bennett goal, like going with 2 big body checks before being able of getting on a breakaway?
Yeah, I came on late. I saw the one great hit, and then I think Lucy blocked the shot, which sprung Benny, and then an unreal move. Just all in all, it was a really good shift by those two especially, and yeah, I had the best seat in the house for the goal. It was awesome.
Do you think you forced them to lose their composure? Like, is that one of the things?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we just went out there, played hockey. We're physical when we needed to be, just supported pucks. We talked about it in the third. If you have to take a punch, take a punch. If you have to take a cross check, take a cross check. Spear, slash in the face, whatever the case is. You've got to take it. And I mean, we spent the whole period on the power, and we're able to put in a couple insurance ones, but when the time needed, where we needed to stick up for each other, it was there. But we just play a really smart game, and that's really it.
Did you think you frustrated them? What happened in the third period?
No, I mean I don't think so. I mean, we just, like I just said, played our game, our style, stuck up for each other when needed to. But like I just said, we talk about it. If you have to take a punch in the face, you got to do it. Cross check, slash in the face, whatever the case is. I mean, we just. It's a series, you got to stick up for each other, but, it's nice on the power play, too.
And that's your brand? That's the Panthers brand? You don't want to get in the track meet with them?
No, I mean, I don't think anybody does. There's no need for 4-on-4 or, matching stuff. And, I mean, we're not gonna scare them by doing something at the end of the game or whatever. It's a series, you stick up for each other, and just in a game like that, it's out of reach. Just be smart. We need guys for the next game, and there's no need to risk anything, and if they want to do it, they can, but just stick up for each other.
Yeah, it was tight game, definitely. After first period, half of the second, so it's still like even the goals. They got good team, they got good offense, good defense. So it's a battle.
Sergey, when they're killing penalties early like that, and you're seeing a lot of pucks early, what does that do for yourself and settling into the game?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to build the moment and trying to stay in the moment, and help the guys to win the moment.
So after the Oilers got 8 goals in the first 2 games, what do you think changed tonight that you guys were able to shut them down as well as you did?
I mean, they still made a good plays. They played great in their home. They played great here. So it's a good team, and we had a good PK. We had the good sticks. Guys played hard. Played our hockey.
Sergey, what about your play? 84 saves in the first 2 games, another 32 tonight. Where are you at right now? Are you in that zone?
Yeah, I mean, I just one at a time. One moment at a time. I don't think too much. It's it's a Stanley Cup final. I appreciate the opportunity and value the opportunity to play. And yeah, it's just it's a privilege to be here.
Sergey, when there's
Well, that was after the game last night. Again, a big 6-1 win, and Game 4 in South Florida scheduled for Thursday night with a chance to really take a commanding 3-1 lead in the Stanley Cup Finals. You saw there President Trump arriving in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He is expected to speak shortly, commemorating the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon for Florida Live. We are here weekdays at 2 o'clock, 2 to 3 p.m. right here on Fox Local and on YouTube. So we will see you again tomorrow.